afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our April webinar. Our guest this afternoon is Neliswe Mbara, and the topic is going to be looking at the generational wealth differentiator. Neliswe is a financial planning professional who partners with financial planners to bridge implementation gaps and embed a mutual wealth integrated wealth planning processes into their advice practices. She supports advisors in customizing this approach to deliver more practical, consistent, and impactful client experience that drives deeper engagement and better financial outcomes. She specializes in lifestyle financial planning and uses coaching principles to help advisors strengthen their value proposition and build more meaningful relationships while supporting the execution of strategic initiatives across wealth distribution channels. Neliswe have more than 10 years experience in the financial industry. Beyond her professional work, Neliswe is deeply passionate about generational wealth and financial behavior. As a financial literacy contributor, she is the author of both an adult financial journal and a children's financial literacy book designed to help individuals and families build healthy money habits from an early age. Her work is grounded not only in theory but in practice. As a mother and financial coach, she actively teaches and models money principles within her own home, reinforcing her beliefs that the foundation of wealth are built through everyday behaviors and conversations. She's a certified financial planner and holds an advanced postgraduate diploma in estate planning, a BCom honors in financial planning, a BCom degree, and is a certified integral coach. Neliswe, thank you for your presence this afternoon. We're looking forward to you sharing your expertise and love listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rihanna, for the introduction. I just want to double check that. Can anyone see my slide? Is my slide still up on your side, Rihanna?
It's up, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So I just want to get my slides up and just a warm welcome, obviously, to everyone who is joining us today. It is a privilege for me to be in front of you and talking about something that I'm really so deeply passionate about. And if you were listening in when Rihanna was introducing me, it is something that I live and model each and every day in our family and in the young humans that I get to interact with in workshop facilitations. And before I just obviously start with our session, I'll just like to obviously acknowledge everyone in the room. And I'm intentionally doing this today as well because this conversation really touches us differently. Whether you are an educator, you are a parent, or you are a guardian or a caregiver. Often, sometimes also financial planners join us. Welcome to the session. And regardless of your role, as I said, we are all the contributors to how the children who are obviously then behind us, how those stories of them are shaped around money and how that then transforms to how they experience money and show up around money. And today I just really want to obviously shift the thinking and rather shift the responsibility that we all carry. And this is not really another session of how can we teach kids to save, how can we teach kids to invest, how can we teach kids to manage their money. This is a session where Rihanna really reached out and said we really want to drive that impact around the behavior that influences money decision. So today we are really magnifying the class as you see there on the screen, and we are looking into what are the behaviors, whether these are at home, they are in the schoolyards, in the school classrooms, whether it's at play play dates, oh my gosh, we really do attend quite a lot of play dates. Or whether it's at those family gatherings, or even for some children, they get to sit in some of your financial planning meetings that you have with your financial planners. All of those interactions influence how kids experience money and how they will obviously then show up around money. So as I said, we're not here to talk about how to save, how to budget, and the likes of that. But before we really get into it, I'd really just like to ask the room, you can drop it on the chat if you'd like. So my question is, what is the one thing you are hopeful for in the next hour that we have together? Perfect. I'm not going to really introduce myself again. I think Rihanna did quite an amazing job at that. This is just a bit about me, but over and above this, I'm just someone who's really passionate about humans and really seeing us as people live the best of our lives. And obviously, it means I'm deeply also passionate about kids, because kids learn from us, and we are here to really then drive that conversation in terms of how can we use what we know or what we don't know and what we might not see and what we see to really then deepen those money behavior conversations that we have with our kids. And before we get to it, I'd just like us to be really honest here, because I'm a person, and there are people on call here today, and we all have our own things, whether it's a money thing. Some are helpful, some are not helpful. But the thing that we must all be aware of is that it's okay. It's okay where we are, and it's okay to be figuring it out. And that's what we are here today, to really figure it out together. So just a bit part of myself. I grew up in a lovely village in rural KZN called Madundube. It's a beautiful village. There's nothing much to do, but at the same time, there's quite a lot of things to do because it's quite community entrenched. But there was no visible money conversations where it was said perhaps in the household that come today we are here to talk about money around a dinner table. It was not formalized. There was no structured plans, and there was no intentional conversations. But there's something about it when I look back, because it was always there. It wasn't spoken about, it wasn't visible, but it was always there. I saw it. Money physically moving hands from my father's wallet to my mother's hands, where she would then quickly tuck it in her pinafore so that we don't see how much money she got, so that we don't ask for money, because hey, all of a sudden things come up when we see money. I also felt it. I felt it in how my mother would then take that money and really stretch it to fit everything that she needed to do. I saw her tucking money in envelopes where she would say this is for Stokvel, tucking money into her bag where she would say this is for groceries, and putting some far away under the mattress, or sometimes inside the wardrobes, just under the clothes, where she would say, now this is for emergency if anything really comes up. But over and above that, I also experienced it. I experienced it in the opportunities that it was able to unlock for us. And my father did that so well, where he made it so intentional that he drove the message around what money can unlock for you. Now, in him doing that, he was also driving a behavior. He really told us that you have to work hard for your money. You're not just working hard to earn it, but you're working hard also to keep it. And in keeping it, how are you also sharing it in the family unit that you belong in, and in the community that you belong in? Now, some of those lessons helped me, and some of them not so much. I had to really unlearn. And that's because we know that whatever we experience earlier in life, that doesn't just teach us about money. all those experiences, those touch points and those seeing experiences, they were not just teaching me about money, but they also shaped how I feel about money and how I behave around money, even as I transitioned from a kid to a teen, to a young adult, and to the adult that I am here today. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm just still figuring it out. But what I've come to realize is that the behavior is what stays with us. And if it's the behavior that stays with us, we then understand the impact of the call to responsibility that we have as the guardians of the little humans that are following in our footsteps. And I want us perhaps to also reflect on this. And the question, I love asking questions, and you might write them down, but definitely, Brianna, there's a need for the questions posed here. We are happy to share them. What money habits are your children already copying from you? It's not what you are teaching, but what they are seeing. Now, when we want to talk about behavior, we're not talking here about the intent or perhaps what we'd like to do, but we are talking about the things that we actually repeat, the patterns. It's what we do over and over again. It's how we show up, how we respond under pressure, and it's the choices that we make even when no one is watching us. And this is important for us to understand, because we have come to realize, and I honestly hope we all have come to realize, that children do not just learn from the things that we just say once, but from my experience with the two little ones that I have, and I've had to really change and adapt in how I'm showing up, is that children learn from what we repeat consistently. So when we talk about money, we are talking about a life skill here. This is the life skill that you are transferring to your kids and enabling them to becoming adults that are able to self-regulate and are able to make much more informed financial decisions. Now, we all know, I've sort of positioned it earlier, that how we grow up also shows up in our later years in life. And also, it is influenced by the environments that we grew up in. It's influenced by the money conversations we hear in the household, whether that's in the household, that's at the schools, that's at the playgrounds we go to, and in the experiences that we go through. And most importantly, what we are modeling as then the guardians. What are we modeling to the kids? What are they seeing from us? Now, the strongest teacher for me in the room, when I look at my experiences with kids, it's not the loudest teacher, but it is the person that is mostly visible. And as we know, children are always watching. And so whether we realize it or not, we are consistently teaching. I've said it, that kids see everything. They see what we do. And I'd just like maybe to share a story here, our family story. So I have a young one, it's a girl, she is 5 years old. And our conversations with money started haphazardly when she was almost 2 years old. And that's the time where I was writing our kids' financial literacy book. Because obviously money at that point in time was something that was top of my tongue, I didn't realize just how much I was talking about it. And I heard her haphazardly saying, money dololo, money do. And I was not aware of what she was saying, but then she knew what she meant. And then I later realized that she meant, oh, the money is finished. And it's because that's the language that she was hearing, and I had to adapt and change that. But then she obviously has grown, and she's gotten a piggy bank, and she understands that obviously also your money story grows as you grow. With her piggy bank now, whatever she says is that, is she saving money for perhaps a school holiday, perhaps that she'd like to go to, or is she saving money for a special treat? She has not really found a goal because we haven't grasped the concept of goal. But that is something that we are obviously going to build towards. But in how I then plan for those things that she might aspire to, she's seeing how I am spending around those things. She's seeing how I'm reacting when I'm under financial pressure. Do I fight? Do I freeze? Do I flight, or do I phone? She sees all those things, and she sees about how I talk about affording things. I had to change my language because usually when we go to the shops, obviously we just all carry our phone sometimes, and it's a nice tap and go. And she asked me one time, she said, but where is your money? How are you paying for these things? And then I had to realize that actually I have to be more intentional with how I show up. So sometimes I do actually pay with hard money so that she can see the exchange that you actually, when you are buying something, you actually pay using money. And that allowed us to have another money conversation of the different ways you can actually pay for the things that you are buying. And sometimes what we do as parents is that we don't also share the stories of our recovery from a financial setback. And we miss then the intentional teachings of kids that sometimes it's okay for you to wait to plan better so that you can recover better, so that obviously you achieve your desired financial goals. Now, this is something that I just love to say, and if you are in the room here in your background and you feel that one moment, you can really say it with me, that wow, because the children are really not just watching what we are saying, but they are watching more than our lesson plan. And if we know that they are these visible creatures, how can we use what they see to better enable them to understand the behaviors around money? Again, there's a question. So I want to ask you, and I'd like this to really sit with you. And the question here is, what are your learners, or children rather, see often when it comes to money? What do they see in the family? Not the version that you are explaining, but the version that you are living every single day. As parents, we spend quite a lot of time thinking about goals. I know that about myself, that I'm always thinking about the goals, saving for their education, or perhaps the milestone that they have to reach. The goal might be that you want your child to be good with money, but those goals are good. They are great goals. They are very much well articulated, but behavior does not just come from a goal. The behavior comes from a system that we are using, the system that enables us to then reach those goals, and the system that enables us to see if is it practical for us to reach those goals. If it's not practical, what are the other systems or rather tools we can use to then reach those goals? And when we look at then kids, I've never also heard of any adult, for example, that would just say that my child woke up one day and all of a sudden was not crying when we're going to the grocery shopping, because not all of a sudden when it comes to us walking through the aisles where there's the candy shops and there's the lighting gadgets, they look away. I've never heard of any parent said that. But these things have changed because of the systems that we are using. A child really doesn't just wake up one day and they become disciplined, because they just choose to be. They do that because of what they have seen around them, of what has been practiced in the family unit, in the school environment, and in those financial conversations environment, and how often and how intentionally that has been reinforced rather time and time again. So the real question here is really not about what are we teaching, but it's about what system exists in your home today. And I'd like us to I love books, and I love quoting quotes when I do presentations, and I saw this one quite fitting here, and I'd like us to use James Clear thinking here, where he says we really do not rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. If the goal here is financial responsibility for our children, the system needs to be then the repeated money rhythm in our homes, in the environments, in the life experiences, and in the modeling that the children get to experience through us. I love anything that has to do with regulation. It's one new term that I'm using quite often these days, just because of my love for the brain and why we do the things we do. And we know we also experience this as adults. Obviously, then our kids experience it, and they see us, how we react when we feel these things. And this is one of the important things that I'd really like you to take away from today. And before we teach children how to spend money, we must really teach them the most important things, and even teach ourselves the most important thing, which is how to sit with the feeling of wanting something. That is a very difficult feeling to sit with, because we know, we experience it. When you want something, it's either you want it now, you can't take no for an answer, you can't regulate yourself to then making an informed decisions. But we all know what happens in the real world, and we can take it back to the shop incidents where you can't just do this there and there. But then it's a system, and it's a pattern of built habits that will then inform the behavior. For me, what has helped when we go to the grocery to do groceries, is that I actually have a magnet in the fridge where we write the things that we're going to buy, and over and above that, we also then take it on a piece of paper and we go to the shops. What this does is that I have that list for a week or so, and then it's a conversation in the household in terms of we're going to go to the shop on this day. This is what we are buying. We are not buying a toy, we are not buying a candy, we are not buying anything that is going to be making noise in the house. We are just going to be buying what we are going to buy. And that builds a capacity in the child now to know why we are going to go where we're going, and what are we going to go there for, and how we are actually going to do what we are going to do then. But obviously, we do need then the regulation before we make informed financial decisions. And this is what I've seen to work for the kids that I've interacted with and for our household. What you can do here is really, instead of just rushing to say no to the child, we don't have money. And I've often realized that also signals something in the child's brain, where perhaps now we are pushing them to a scarcity mindset, and that will also influence them, how they show up in their later years around money. So instead of really saying no, we don't have money for that, we can slow it down here for them. And when we slow it down for them, we also slow it down for us. We can pause, we can acknowledge the feeling that's currently happening in the grocery aisle, in the car parking lot, wherever it may be. It is a good enough a time for us to try something new, and for us to to help the kids to regulate so that they can make an informed financial decision, and to really allow the child to think their decision through, and allowing the child room to find their own answer in terms of deciding then, is this a need or is this a want? And when you question here and you remain curious about your child, about the environment you are in, more often than not, we are able to walk away from that impulsive purchase. And what I just wanted to drive here as well is that children do not make poor money decisions only because they lack the knowledge. They really often struggle because they cannot regulate the emotion in the moment. Now, perhaps I can't see the room, but maybe as a show of hands, I'd like to see those who can regulate their emotions in the moment when it comes to that impulsive purchases. I mean, this is something that we can all practice, and when we actually practice it, the kids can see this, and when they can see this, it means they can experience it, and when they experience it, it means that we're not now just having a teaching moment, but we are teaching them self-regulation, and now that's a skill that they can carry into their adulthood, where they will be able then to be the savvy kids that we aspire to raise, kids that can regulate themselves and kids that can make financial informed decisions. I often look at behavior as something obviously that is influenced by what we feel inside the inward and the external. And if we really think of that, we can see that every action is a vote for the type of person we all want to be and the type of person that we want our kids to be. And I want us to shift again how we think about this completely. We can think here of the financial beliefs, the financial values, and the financial experiences, those that our kids experience through us and through the environments that we obviously also usher them to be in, the schools, the friends, the extended family members, all those things. So instead of and this is something that I've also had to do, instead of saying to the child, don't waste money, or I want my child to not waste money, I've had to change the language in terms of saying, I want my child to make good financial decisions. What is then the behavior that is needed to make good financial decisions? And we really unpack it and we have a conversation around that. So instead of saying, for example, I want my child to save, we can shift the identity to the type of child you as the family unit are raising. I am raising a child who thinks before they act, for an example. And the moment we start to use the language that's fitting to the identity that we are building in our kids, that identity feeds into the behavior and it feeds into then how they obviously make these decisions. And as we all know, behavior follows identity, and identity is also shaped by reputation, and all of these things feed each other, where we are able to then enable our kids to create positive habits when it comes to money. And in doing that, they are creating obviously positive behavior around money, where we can really usher them to a place where they can make those informed financial decisions. So what I also just want to maybe leave you here with is that the children are not just learning a skill, they are becoming someone. They are becoming a version of who they will be as they transition throughout their life transitions, from a kid to a teen to a young adult to now a fully fledged person who's an adult who needs to now make real financial decision, and someone who has a positive relationship with money that has been modeled obviously throughout their lifetime through the behavior and the language that we are using in the family unit. Now, when it comes to just teaching, teaching is really not the same as what we model at home. I've said it, I think, so many times, and I think repetition was much more intended here, because we have to model the type of behavior we also want our kids to see. Now, here's the hard truth, and yes, the honest part. We know what to do. Sometimes we might not, but at the back of our mind, we know what we have to do. It's just that we say, oh, maybe this is not an urgent thing, and we will figure it out as we grow older. We still have time. And we just tell our children that they need to save money, they need to be patient, don't waste. But what they actually often see is the opposite, because when it comes to me saying, hey, you need to save your money, but my child just sees me going to the shop and sees me just tapping, or sees me just going to have fun, nice times and just buying things for instant gratification. There's no system that they can see visibly. This is the system that we're using to track where our money is going to as a family. This is the system we are tracking in terms of how perhaps we can even earn more money, because as a family we have these goals and these goals need money. But so most of the time they also see stress-led decisions, and children really, really trust what they see more than what they hear. And the question then becomes not about do I know what I'm teaching, but then it becomes a question of, does the behavior that I'm showing really show the message that I'm trying to teach? Those two things have to go hand in hand to drive deeper, a positive adoption of money when it comes to our kids. And here, this is really not about us being perfect. I mean, we are all just really still figuring it out. It is about alignment with the values that we want to teach the kids. We must also be modeling them so that it allows for much more greater experience for the kids, where they can see that what they hear is also what is being modeled and is what they can see. We'll later get onto that slide of how to use the kids' 5 senses in terms of really driving deeper conversations around the behavior of money. So maybe to bring it more in practical terms, I know I've said quite a lot. We don't have to do much, and we don't have to do the hard stuff. We have to do what our kids understand. Exactly where they are, that's where we will meet them. And we can look at perhaps concepts such as needs and wants. Can our kids really tell the difference between buying? What conversations happen in the family unit when it comes a moment where we have to buy perhaps a big item in the family unit? Does one parent or just go and buy, and then they come back and the kids see, oh, now we have a big TV? Or is there perhaps a conversation around that? Is this a need? Is this a want? And are they able also to split their money with intention? Part of what you can do there is, if your kids have pocket money, you can have that conversation of just questioning in, remaining curious in terms of what are they going to use this money for? Is there a particular need that they have agency for? Now, obviously, the language use differs between the different age bands, and you know your kids more because you spend the greatest time with them, and you know the language that will really land well for them. But what I really want to drive here is that it's the curiosity behind the questioning and the curiosity behind the showing up and the intentionality behind obviously using all these 4 behaviors to really drive that conversation for your kids around money. And what perhaps we can look at when we look at delayed gratification is, and going back to that sitting with the discomfort of wanting something now, can they really wait enough to choose better? And what perhaps are the questions that you as the guardian, the caregiver, the parent or the educator, what are some of the questions that you've come up with that will then drive them to be making that informed decision? Is it perhaps asking a question around, do you need this thing now? or can you get it later? And part of the conversation that we have in our household is around a need and a want, and it just haphazardly happened because obviously it's conversations. But I remember a day where I was talking to my young one, and we were talking about buying a toy that she's been wanting. And then I asked her, do you need this toy? The toy could, those toys, they could sing, they do everything, they light up. And then she said, actually, I don't need it now. I can wait for it, and maybe Santa will get it for me. And that was such a powerful moment because she made the decision herself. She said she can wait, but then in her thinking, Santa will get it for her. We'll get to that at another stage where we actually have the conversation about Santa. But it was a new word that now she's started using when it comes to choosing what she would use with her money. And the word is actually. And it was such a powerful moment for me as well, which was not necessarily intentional. It just happened. And this is because the money conversation has become a behavior, an everyday behavior in the household. Now, I'd like you to make it more practical. And how can we really make it practical? We've spoken about that kids remember what they do and not just what we lecture them on, what they hear. So if you take those 4 behaviors that we just touched on, you can have a shopping challenge if you're going to the shops to run errands, and perhaps you've done your list and now it's about, that thing that now they just want impulsively just creeps in. It could be a challenge of, are we shopping for needs, are we shopping for wants? And just that reward when the child says, oh, actually this is not a need, it's a want. That well done, good job for making the right decision. It just fuels the child's confidence that they know that they are doing something right, and it allows them to be even more open to learning about doing something right when it comes to money. Something that really works, we have piggy banks around the house. We can choose if that money is going to the spend jar, is it going to the save jar. And most recently we started grade R this year, and grade R came with the concept of giving. I was wondering and asking myself, how are we going to come up with the concept of giving? But it was so much more nicer. Now again, the environment supporting the conversations and the behavior around money, everything feeds into each other here. Now the concept of giving came about where every Friday it's chapel, and we had to now budget in how much do you actually want to give on a Friday. And she first said, oh, the other kids give notes. And I said, no, but you don't have to do what someone else is doing. A coin is more than enough for you to give. And then the conversation kept going and going, and eventually she was much more comfortable giving. Also not every Friday, because in your giving you must also know how much you can give and how much you need to save for a later use, and how much perhaps you can spend now. And then the waiting game is something that obviously we all as adults practice. I often have my clothes in the shopping in the cart there on Superba list, and I often wait because I know that I hardly need all those things that are in that shopping cart. So that's something again that we can do, because we are now much more in the digital age where everything is just instant gratification, which is a privilege because we don't have to be running to the shops all the time, but us buying on take us 660 or whatever, if it's Woolies, whatever, wherever we are buying, kids are just seeing things dropped off at home, but then they are missing the process from me actually planning in terms of what I want to buy, me budgeting for what I want to buy, and actually me spending on actually what I want to buy. And gratitude is everything that just honestly just allows us to feel what money can do for us. So maybe just another question to the room. would be, what game could your family perhaps use this week that would really help you to drive that conversation? And remember here, it's about the repeated consistency, and repeated consistency is far more powerful than any perfect system that really never takes off, never lifts off, and it never happens. Remember, it is about the repeated consistency. Now, I didn't really much know what to call this slide. It's something that I've seen working and I'm not here to coin it as yet, but there's something that happens when we stimulate our five senses, even us as adults, when it comes to learning a new concept. And I've seen it work greatly with the young minds as well. When it comes to then that sight, what are they seeing? What do they observe around them when it comes to money? Are they observing us ordering from Checkers 660, as I said? Are they observing us calling them rather to say, hey, we have some supplies that are missing. It's time for us to top up. And this is the grocery list. This is our list. Let's order it. And perhaps what I like to do is when something is not on special, I take it out my cart and my young one would ask, oh, why are you not buying that? And it would be, it's on special. There was a moment where we all know Checker 660 with the minis, and she couldn't understand why the minis suddenly disappeared. And we could talk about campaigns, that shops sometimes run campaigns so that they drive sales. I mean, it's a 5-year-old. She obviously, I had to find the language for her to understand, but she did say at the end, I still don't understand. We'll get there. It's baby steps. It's one thing at a time. And if we're looking at here, what do they often hear about money? Do they hear that we do not have money, or do they hear that we are spending smartly so that we save our money? And when it comes to those purchases, are they able to really physically touch money? It's so surprising that most kids nowadays don't actually physically see what money looks like, because we just obviously go swipe, go tap, and we are missing then the importance of actually teaching them the differences between money, whether that's currency or whether that's just coins and notes. And that allows us to even drive deeper conversations around money, how they handle money, and the tools obviously then that can be used to handle that money. Because when it comes to that conversation, it could be just an easy conversation of there's different ways to pay. Some of the money stays in the bank. Obviously, you as the family, you find the right way to properly position that for your kids. And with emotions, it's really how what emotions show up around money. We've spoken quite a great deal around the things that I'm repeating here in this slide, but I just wanted to drive it much more in depth that kids learn differently. Some of us here, we know that we have kids that might learn better when they hear stuff. Some know our kids learn better when they can physically see that budgeting template, or when they can physically touch that money and they go and exchange whatever they are buying with that money. And this now is what is the responsibility we have, where we can use what we know now to create that multi-sensory learning environment for our kids, where we can really then stimulate our children, the kids, and everyone then that would be in that learning environment, whether you're an educator, and we can really stimulate the child in terms of one or more of these senses. And while they are learning obviously about money and the behavior of money, and this, I've seen the evidence of it, and this could really potentially improve the way they show up around money, what they understand about money, and their behavior then to money. Now, I just felt somewhat compelled to share this slide, even though it's not a session of how we are teaching kids to save, but take what we've spoken about, find where your child is in their different age bands, and find what is suitable for you as a family unit, and the tools that you can use then to drive those money conversations with behavior in mind. For perhaps 3 to 6 year olds in my household, we have a 3-year-old, and he absolutely just loves the piggy bank because he can literally lift it up and shake it, and it just creates a euphoria experience for him because he can hear the noise that the coins are making. Obviously, he'll grow to then understanding that when we're going to the shop, this is what we're doing. He'll grow to counting the coins. He'll grow to practice waiting. It's the trick here is to find what works and to try many options until you actually then find necessarily then what works for your kids. So really teach what fits the season, and rather than just forcing any adult concepts to way too early for your kids. Now, I just want to bring this home in terms of then the tools that drive the behavior. Now, we spoke about some few behaviors to pick up. If we just look at an example of needs and wants, we can really look at the conversation that it drives in terms of, do we need this? And then the behavior that it's building is a decision-making behavior. And then we can look at maybe the family decisions where we are bringing everyone perhaps in the room, and they can see what we have to give up in order for us as a family to afford the lifestyle perhaps that we are living. And that brings then the behavior of trade-off, brings the behavior of delayed gratification. It builds patience in our kids, and it allows them to properly plan, where then they use obviously the tools that are there supporting each of these behaviors that we are looking at building for our kids. Now, what can we do differently? We have parents, guardians, educators, and the advisor in the room. We can really model more visible systems at home. We can create consistency and safety as well. And we can make, as educators, there is a real lack of financial literacy in education, but we can practice it as part of learnings, and we can introduce different concepts in our school classrooms. And the advisor obviously in the room is to translate wealth for families into habits and values, where you differentiate yourself as the generational differentiator, advisor, whatever you want to call yourself. But we all have a role to play, and the question is, are we really playing it intentionally? These are just some resources that can make the conversations much more easier. You can use different stories, different prompts, charts, and tools to make that behavior visible for your kids. In my household, as I've mentioned, we have piggy banks lying around. We also have a budget tool that's stuck on our fridge, a magnet. We also have a planning magnet for the groceries. It all feeds into the system we're using of building the behavior around money. But over in that, because also we know that literacy, not just financial literacy alone, but literacy, the reading of books, kids really are not doing that. I've taken it to being an intentional act of mine, where we do incorporate financial literacy books in our readings at home. And the one that obviously I love the most is the one I wrote, which is the Financial Fitness Mindset for Kids. And it's really a family conversation tool where you can have different conversations with kids with the book open, and you can create different tasks for kids, and you can build that appetite for your kids in terms of them building behavior around money. Ethnic Kids, which is a digital platform where you can buy books. They have quite a wide range of financial literacy books for kids, and even your local bookshops, obviously, they will have those. But you would see, if you go on your bank app, you would see that our banks are actually at the forefront of also being in the conversation around creating legacy, not just for their banked members, but bank clients, but for their family units. Each and every organization really drives the conversation around family units, because organizations, I understand that we don't just build wealth for one individual, but we build wealth for the family unit. And there are tools that support that conversation, whether it's budgeting templates, it's kids' financial literacy courses that you can take for free, whether it's goal trackers, whether it's free piggy banks. I have a friend who says in her earlier years, when she used to go to the banks with her parents, the bank used to give her a free piggy bank, which was quite nice, because that really forms part of her earliest memory when it comes to money. I'm wary of time, but I just want to then close it properly here, so we allow time for questions. Now, if we are looking at that wealth generational transfer conversation, it's also a behavior conversation, because if we look at it, it's often cited that 70% of the wealth is lost by the second generation, and 90% of the wealth often cited is lost by the third generation. And this is not because of an implemented investment solution or perhaps market volatility. Yes, that plays a factor in there, but it's also largely influenced by the lack of preparation, poor communication, and unpreparedness for beneficiaries. And we can say that is the behavioral gap that we have, and it can then become your wealth differentiator for your family, where you start today really deepening the behavior around money with your kids, so that when you actually then later on pass wealth to them, we're not passing just wealth, but we're passing deeply entrenched wealth that is obviously mimicked in behavior, in the habits that have been built, in the values that have been communicated with the kids, and in the alignment between the values that we've communicated and now what we've also modeled in the family unit. Okay, and what we don't want here is that we don't want wealth holders that are going to become part of the Blue It crew. We want the wealth to stick, to pass from generation to generation. And this just obviously talks into the previous slide. I'm not going to go through it because of time. And then just resources and tools we can use at home. I've spoken also quite in great detail around this, in terms of just having those save, spend, and give jars, and the different tools that you can obviously use. And I will say also use your financial accountability partners, who are your financial advisors, because they can also drive those conversations, and perhaps just alert you to the different resources that are out there that you can use to really deepen those conversations in your family units. Now, perhaps just questions for the room. I know I've asked them as I went on through the session, but what money habit is your child or learner absorbing from you right now? Where is your message strong, but your modeling might be weak? And which of those 5 senses are you using well, and which perhaps are you neglecting? And if you were to do one thing today, what is one behavior you will change from today? We are really not raising children for today's decisions. We are raising them for the decisions we won't be here for. And I close with that, Rihanna, and open for questions.
Neliswe, thank you so much. I think this was really quite insightful, and I think we need to be more aware of how we teach our children about money. Like we said, different children learn different ways, but I think the example that we're setting is very powerful, and we need to be quite aware of that. I will go over to questions now. I've just seen some people asking for the slides. We're not going to make the slides available, but the recording will be made available. The recording will be on the YouTube channel, and I have posted on there. Just give us about a week or so, and you will definitely find the recording there, and you're welcome to watch it as many times as you like. And with that, I'm going to open the floor for questions. We've got 5 minutes if there's any questions. Anybody for a question? Neliswe, I'm not seeing any questions. I think you have really covered a lot. I think you've given people a lot of information that they are going to be thinking about, and as people said, they want to go and listen to it again. So I think with that, I'm going to close our meeting today. Thank you so much for your presence here and for sharing your knowledge with us. And to everybody online, thank you for joining us. Please look out for our next webinar, which would be the last Wednesday of May. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.